Well, guys, hell hath no fury like an angry Democratic donor. Some top big money backers are venting publicly over the way the Harris campaign took $1 billion, billion and a half dollars, of their money and basically set it on fire, losing in a landslide to President-elect Trump. One mega donor is letting out his frustrations with this brutal shot at Kamala's future in politics.
I think this disqualifies her forever. If you can't run a campaign, you can't run America. The same thing is going to follow Harris for the rest of her career. She cannot be trusted with the money. And the donors are going to be like, where is this money?
And Harris is not making matters any better because, check this out, she emerged from 3 weeks of political hiatus to deliver what many say was at the very least, a very bizarre video message.
I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th. And you have the same purpose that you did. And you have the same ability to engage and inspire.
Top Harris campaign officials are also consoling themselves, gathering on a podcast to give a political autopsy on what went wrong. It's full of blame and finger-pointing and one shocking revelation on how Kamala might have been doomed from the very start.
107 days, 2 weeks up because of a hurricane, 2 weeks talking about how she didn't do interviews, which, you know, she was doing plenty, but we were doing in our own way, being up against a narrative that we weren't doing anything or we were afraid to have interviews is completely and also like took hold a little bit. And we just gave us another thing we had to fight back for that Trump never had to worry about.
We were behind. I mean, I think it surprised people because there was these public polls that came out in late September, early October, showing us with leads that we never saw.
Oh, the places we'll go in this segment. First of all, she did not give interviews. we do television. We were begging for any sort of clip to use of her. She was not doing that. It's great to have everybody here on Thanksgiving Eve. Kat, let me start with you on what you thought about her, whatever, the video or the podcast and the autopsy and all that.
The video was crazy. I was looking at it and I was like, what does this remind me of? And it reminds me of being in my early 20s in line at the club for the bathroom. And then the girl in front of you who should have left 3 hours starts talking to you. She's like, don't ever, and it's like talking about don't let anyone take your power from you. It was like the same vibe and the same script as that scenario. And on the spending issue, I think that donor is not exaggerating because there's a direct correlation, I think, between campaigning and governing, which is how seriously do you take spending other people's money, right? She spent $900,000. Her campaign did $900,000 to put her face on the Las Vegas sphere, and then obviously lost Nevada. But okay, that just feels to me like why not? Let's put her face on there. Why not? And if that is how seriously you're taking donors' money, that's how seriously you could be taking taxpayer money. And we've seen, and then she's posting videos like that where looks like she's having a fun time in Hawaii and whatever, while a lot of people spent a lot of money and believed in this thing that they all knew from the inside wasn't quite the hopeful picture that they were presenting to everyone else.
And it's also, you know, there were the big donors, like the mega donors, but they were relentless asking people to send $25, $50, $150. So I feel even more sorry for those folks. Let's listen to Joe Rogan. He had some thoughts about this.
If you do pay people, it's not going to have the same impact. Yeah. You know, I think these Call Her Daddy shows and all these different shows that she went on, I mean, I'm sure they had an impact. Yeah. But I think that in the future, I'm sure they're scrambling to try to create their own version of this show. Right. This is one thing that keeps coming up, like we need our own Joe Rogan. Right. But they had me.
Well, number one, they had.
I love that. They could have done it. And I don't think one appearance on Joe Rogan was going to change the trajectory of her campaign, but they didn't even try.
Yeah, if you watch that video of her campaign manager, number one, that's a woman who's resigned to never work in that field again with the interview she gave. That was the transgender of presidential campaigns, right? We may be an epic failure, but we identify as a success. Just because you say you're successful doesn't mean you are successful, I guess. Their ideology of victimhood and faultless failure is dictating their fate, and as a conservative, I'm happy to let it happen. When you look at Joe Rogan, we really need to appreciate just how unique it was for a former president and presidential candidate to sit down and do a 3-hour interview with him from any political party. And when you think about the people that listen to his podcast, they reject woke and they embrace marijuana. They're equally as skeptical of government as they are big business. They have a libertarian streak, but most of them are probably passionately liberal in the older sense of the word, very socially liberal. And so the reason why that matters is there probably aren't many Republicans, like big R Republicans, that could sit down and get through 3 hours with him. There certainly aren't any Democrats right now, but a Donald Trump can. And that's what makes, that is the difference. She sits there and complains about the hurricane. Like, I'm sorry it took all your lives away, but man, it really hurt our chances to win the presidency. Like, come on.
Rosanna, what did you make of her emerging 3 weeks afterwards?
Well, first she had to go to Hawaii and
She had to go to Hawaii. I know, but like, I was
de-stress.
thinking, like, what does it say to young women?
She was late to her own, speech to say thank you for being here and I lost, right? So she did not show up at Howard University the night that Trump won. Took her several hours to concede, right? She was nowhere to be found. Nobody knew where she was. Then she wound up coming back to Howard and thanking everybody. But I think, with Kamala Harris, she couldn't distinguish herself from the president. She thought because she had the mainstream media, she was going to win. She was on The View. They gave her softball questions, and yet she still couldn't distinguish herself from Biden, right? They asked her that question. She said, there's nothing I would do differently. She got Oprah Winfrey, which everybody thought that was a home run. We find out later Oprah Winfrey's company got $1 million from the campaign, right? Yeah. She had Beyonce. She had all these stars. She had everybody. And then we find out they were all paid. Right. They were all paid.
Harold, that video of hers, I'm usually never like this, where I think, wow, somebody really had it in for her. But the fact that they released it was very unflattering. There's very few people left on the campaign that maybe she can't pay anybody, and maybe she said, I don't care, release it. And they said, yes, ma'am, let's do that. But nobody was protecting her. The video's terrible.
I don't disagree with that. First of all, happy Thanksgiving. It's good to see a few new faces around the table. Seeing everybody in other shows. Rosanna, it's great to see you. Kat, congratulations.
Oh,
George, great to see you.
Thank you.
I really failed on the welcome.
The election, no, Dana, you told me to do it. That's why I'm doing it. The election started out when she got the nomination, when Biden decided not to run. What I don't like about what her campaign is saying now is that they knew this was a change election. The reason that Joe Biden had to not run was because the country believed that 70-30 we were going in the wrong direction and he was underwater. You look between that time and the time that Rosanna just said when she was on a friendly show, The View, and I believe my friend Sunny Hostin asked her, what would you do differently over the last? She said, I can't think of anything that I would have done differently. That was a devastating moment for the campaign when you consider what the voters were screaming. And then you combine that with, she never gave us a clear economic message. She never gave us a clear border security message. And she never gave us a true sense of even a foreign policy message. Now, I'm only 54, but my little understanding of presidential history, you have to do these things if you want to run successfully for president. Now, in terms of her video, I really don't care anymore. Even the video of her campaign managers, they are irrelevant in where we are right now. I like them as people, but we have a lot to get done. Even the donors, I love when donors get on and say the things that they say. What I hope everyone does in the party, we did a segment yesterday on celebrities and what they were thinking. The celebrities, the donors, and most importantly, the politicians, stop what you're doing for a couple of weeks. Right. Get out in the country and listen to single moms that have 2 kids trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet. Go into a family where a father or mom or both of them have been displaced from their jobs because the manufacturing or the job in their area has been moved offshore. Talk to them, listen to them. You wonder why Donald Trump is winning? He's winning because he's speaking to them. I know it hurts people, a lot of my party, because we called him a lot of names. I didn't, but some people called him a lot of awful names. But this race came down to a very simple proposition. People believe that Donald Trump can make their lives better, more so than they did Kamala Harris. Simple as that. Yeah. We now have to get on with the business of trying to figure out how I'm a Democrat, how we connect better with everyday working class voters. And until we figure that out, no amount of donors telling us what they're going to do and telling people they can't run, no amount of celebrities, even commentators telling them, until we figure out what the voters want, we're going to be on the outside looking in until we're able to speak to those issues.
Do you think any of those campaign managers, deputy managers will be running a campaign in 2028 for Democrats?
Not if they keep talking like they were talking there. They had to figure out, say, look, we were wrong. We missed something, and this is what we missed, as opposed to you can't see a storm happen and people die.
terrible.
And that threw us off our game.
They still cannot
And that we
figure
did,
out.
and that she was doing all these interviews. I'm like, I mean, roll the tape. I can't find it. Okay.